Let me take y'all back to Florida. And not the Florida you think of now with Disney World and beaches. This was 1816. Florida wasn't even a U.S. state yet, and slavery was still going strong all across the South. But down by the Apalachicola River, there was something different, a place that scared the hell out of white folks, and it was called the Negro Fort. So here's what happened. Back in the early 1800s, the United States and Great Britain were beefing. That's what the War of 1812 was all about. And it wasn't just in one place, it was popping off all over the US, and it was mostly about control, land, trade, and power. Now, at the time, Florida didn't even belong to the United States yet. It was still a part of Spain. But Spain was slipping. They weren't really doing anything with the land, no real soldiers, no strong presence. It was wide open. So the British saw an opportunity, and they were like, Spain ain't guarding it, and we're already at war with the US. Let's use this Florida land to mess with America from the south. So the British came down into Spanish Florida and built a big military fort right by the Apalachicola River. They stacked it with cannons, guns, and a mountain of gunpowder. Then they started telling enslaved black people and Native Americans, look, if you help us fight against the US, we'll give you freedom. Now, the British weren't doing this out of kindness. They were using black people and Native Americans to weaken the US. But still, people came because slavery wasn't life, freedom was. When the war ended in 1815, the British left, but they didn't tear down the fort. They handed it over to about 300 black people and 30 Seminole and Choctaw allies who had helped them. That's how the Negro Fort was born. And once the word got out, it spread like wildfire. More and more enslaved people started running toward the fort from Georgia, Tennessee, even from as far away as Mississippi. By some estimates, 800 or more fugitives settled in that area. It was more than a hideout. It was a free black settlement. And the people inside that fort, they weren't just defending themselves, they were fighting back, launching raids into Georgia and protecting anyone who made it to their side. That's why white plantation owners were so mad. It wasn't just that black people were living free. They were escaping slavery in real time and finding safety at the Negro Fort. The slaveholders wanted their property back, and they wanted it now. By early 1816, the pressure was on. General Andrew Jackson wrote to the Spanish governor demanding the fort to be destroyed. At the same time, he told the U.S. military commanders to do whatever it took to destroy it and return the stolen Negroes and property to their rightful owner. That's the truth. That's the motive. This wasn't just about land. It was about black liberation being too close for comfort. But freedom didn't sit well with the folks who benefited from slavery. White slave owners in Georgia were heated. Their property kept escaping and making it to the fort. And the U.S. government, they weren't having it. They said the fort was a threat to national security. But let's be real. The threat was black people being free, armed, and organized. So, in July 1816, the U.S. military pulled up with warships. And they didn't even try to negotiate. They fired one hot cannonball right into the fort's ammunition stash. Boom! That one shot blew up the whole place. Over 270 people, black men, women, and kids died instantly. Some were torn apart, some burned alive. Eyewitnesses said body parts were hanging from the trees. Only a few made it out alive. One officer said the explosion was awful and the scene was horrible beyond description. And one of the generals in charge of that attack was none other than General Andrew Jackson, who later became President of the United States. The military looked at it as a clean sweep. No one was held accountable, no charges, no investigation, no apology, just silence. Only a handful of people survived the blast, and many of them were badly injured. Some escaped deeper into the swamps with Native allies, especially the Seminoles. Others were captured and placed back into slavery, with plantation owners in Georgia that claimed they owned the ancestors of the survivors, so they thought that they had a right to them. And here's the worst part. The black commander of the fort, Garcon, and the Choctaw leader survived but were captured. Garcon was executed by firing squad, blamed for an earlier little altercation, and the Choctaw chief was handed over to the Creeks, who scalped him. That smackdown helped spark the first Seminole War because survivors and Seminoles wouldn't let it go. We got another story to tell you about that, so make sure y'all keep following. There's a little marker at the site now, but barely anybody knows what happened there. The Negro Fort was more than a building. It was hope. It was safety. It was proof that we could survive and protect ourselves together. And that's why they blew it up. Because black freedom has always been treated like a threat in this country. But the ground remembers, and so do we. That's why we tell these stories, so that they don't bury us twice. Remember to comment, like, share, and remember to subscribe for more stories they won't put in your textbook. Peace.